Making a feast in early spring ain't easy. There's not much to eat. Homesteader cheese, a recipe called Swedish hardtack. Beautiful. And an old school classic, rhubarb and dried fruit sauce with cream. It's the rainy, hungry gap of spring. The grass is lush, but food is scarce for us. And that was the story for much of history, especially out west. Today we're going to turn skim milk and the bottom of a flour barrel into a perfect lunch for company.
Well, you guys, it is a foggy, slightly rainy spring day out here, and the road is slicker than ice. We have two friends coming today, and we are going to make a pioneer staple. We are going to make cheese. Now, you've watched me fail at butter out here, but somehow I think with two experts, we have Susan, who we know and absolutely trust, and her good friend Sally's coming out. And Sally has a milk cow. And Sally has lived decades of her life very much in the pioneer fashion. Big garden, animals, milk cows. She knows her stuff. So, assuming they can navigate the slippery clay 2-track all the way out here, I don't want to jinx it, but let's just say I'm excited for lunch.
Now, if you think everything is going to go smoothly, the fact that it started raining and the road is falling apart, well, this was our first clue that today had more to throw at us. This 1800s frontier cabin is a haven, though, and the wood stove is lit and the pots are warming. Even with two women who have learned and lived the pioneer skills their whole lives, the recipes today are about to take us for a ride. So let's jump straight into a humble way to turn skim milk in spring into a hearty cheese and a whole meal.
2 teaspoons per 1 gallon milk. But first we pour the milk in the pot.
This is raw skim milk from Sally's milk cow named Camper.
Camper is a Jersey Guernsey. We're adding 2 teaspoons citric acid.
Martha Stewart.
And we stir.
You need to say it in the Martha Stewart voice.
Yeah, I've done a lot of Martha Stewart. We're going to heat to 88 degrees. No, it was a hot pan I put it in, so it's going to go to 88 fairly quickly.
Back in the pioneer days, the late 1800s out here, this would have all been done by feel. No easy read thermometers.
For cheese making, you use stainless steel.
What would they have used traditionally?
Traditionally, I think that she would have used her cast iron pot.
Yeah.
You know, they used it for everything.
Right.
But mozzarella is an Italian cheese. The American way, every culture has a fresh cheese. In Mexico, they have Cuesta Fresca. Cottage cheese would be our fresh cheese. I like it because it's made out of skim milk, and then you can save your cream for butter.
Yes.
And butter, of course, is the premier dairy product. There's a lot of really good cheeses.
Oh, she makes 50 pounds a year of hard cheese.
I make a year's supply of cheese. Cheddar cheese and brie, blue. So we're just bringing this up to 88. So animal rennet. And then you just pour that gently into your milk. That's at 87, 88. And then we're just gonna stir it. And you can see it's starting to form some curds.
Oh, it is?
See them floating around in there?
Already.
Alright, so I might...
You want to trim it?
Trim it. Perfect. Good.
Now there's always the possibility of failure with temperature-sensitive foods, especially out here on a damp, humid day with a wood-burning stove. And we've known failure out here well, but this milk in only minutes has curds forming, and we're well on our way.
Put it back on the heat.
Should I add some more wood?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's add some more wood.
Ooh, my pans are on cook, so it's like, where are the burners anyway? We got your curds and whey. It's the curds. And this yellow stuff is the whey.
What do you use the whey for?
You can water plants with it. The other night, Charlie asked me, he's doing something for health. He's like, do you have any whey? I said, yeah, I have whey all the time. Do you have any in the cupboard? I say no.
Liquid.
Oh, he means like whey protein.
Powder. I just thought it was so funny how oblivious. It's a curd. Wow. Little curds turned into one curd. So when you make a 4-gallon batch of cheese, you have like 4 gallons of whey. So when your husband asks you if you have any whey,
Whoa.
it's still a little lumpy. Put it back in the pot.
Now, Sally and Susan didn't grow up entirely with the old ways. They met when they were 19 and lovingly nicknamed each other Doris and Doris.
Since 1970. Started calling each other Doris as kind of a joke, and it just stuck. 55 years we've called each other Doris. And my kids called her Aunt Doris, and my grandkids
and the
called her
grandkids.
Granny Doris.
Yes, we're all Dorises.
We're all just Dorises.
Many of these skills they taught themselves. It was trial and error and learning with friends. And that's kind of where we're at. Cooking and living off the land is now many generations removed from our family memories. Keeping this knowledge alive is at a critical point. As a people, we probably would be wise to never forget how to survive.
I like this tomato and basil one myself. My fave.
I mean, life is never so comfortable that it's guaranteed. One blip in our delicate system, and it's back to the drawing board for humanity. Plus, I think it's ingrained in our genetics to want to know these skills. On some level, we realize how important they are. For us, for our neighbors, for our families. If you were dropped out here, living off the land, could you do it? Even given farm animals and a house, during this hungry time of the year, when there just isn't anything else? I don't know. I would struggle. And that's where turning something like skim milk into a heartier dish, that is a godsend in early spring. I read once that for a good deal of history in England, almost everyone was unable to drink milk after their childhood years. But a genetic fluke made some able to drink milk and eat cheese into adulthood. Well, that was such a survival advantage, particularly in this time of year when no other food could be had, that those non-milk drinkers died out after a couple of hard springs and were genetically replaced by the few individuals who could eat this food. So never forget that life can come down to this sort of knowledge and this sort of advantage.
I'm going to add some salt, sun-dried tomatoes, and some fresh basil. And then what you do is you knead it. You can see the cheese is very shiny and smooth. You just work all that stuff in there and you work the whey out. The tomatoes make it very sweet.
Now this cheese looks perfect. It has herbs and tomato incorporated into it. It's gorgeous. But we failed along the way. Instead of salt, we sprinkled sugar into it.
Then I'm going to add some salt.
Yep, that little jar wasn't salt. Oh, goodness gracious.
The Dorises now touring live.
The Dorises go pioneer.
But Sally dumped the ball of cheese back into the warm whey, stretched it, and added salt this time.
Perfection. Perfection.
Yep, on the first try.
You bet.
This wasn't to be the last slip of the day, though. Oh, there would be more. Because we're not just making cheese. We need a sturdy carbohydrate to go with this, as well as a dessert.
It calls for 3/4 of a cup of buttermilk, and I added a cup and a half.
Oh.
I'm just gonna make it work. You gotta be able to roll it out. So we just keep. It's coming together.
While we were focused on making the cheese, Susan brought this dough together by creaming butter with sugar.
Yeah, so I'm just creaming the butter and sugar. I put a lump of butter, 5 tablespoons maybe. Some sugar, maybe 4 tablespoons.
The full recipe, as always, is in the video description, so look there for exact details so you can taste these flavors of the past in your own home. The dry ingredients are next.
And a cup of oatmeal, and I need some salt. That much, maybe? 3/4. Put in a little bit of soda. Half a teaspoon, yeah? Mm-hmm. A half a cup of turkey red flour, which I ground from whole berries. It's a lighter whole wheat flour. Well, I think it originally came from Turkey to the Ukraine. I just researched turkey red. I knew it was a heritage wheat, and I read that a Mennonite wheat farmer from the Ukraine brought it to America. He was being persecuted. He came to America and to Kansas, and he brought the wheat with him. They think that that is what made Kansas into a wheat state, because turkey red was perfect for Kansas. So that was in 1874. The other thing is there were about 5 counties in Kansas that were growing the wheat late 1800s, and my ancestors all homesteaded in Kansas and were wheat farmers, and they lived in McPherson County, which is where the wheat was. More than likely that my ancestors were growing turkey red, and I just figured this out the other day. It's pretty cool.
That is very cool.
Then came the culprit today, buttermilk. The recipe calls for 3/4 of a cup, so if you make this, don't double the amount like we accidentally did. Okay, this is a little bit unusual, but the way to do this is to take lard and grease the underside of a baking sheet and then roll out these crackers thin on top of it. Rolled out thin, this soft dough needs a good pricking all over with a fork to make sure that no air bubbles pop up. And then it's into a medium-hot oven to bake and get crisp.
Just watch.
Okay, here they come.
Okay. And while the first one bakes, let's do another batch.
Well, it's not in for. There, now it's.
Perfect. Good, Blossom. Now it's salty.
I didn't want to insult you, but I thought it really needed a well salt.
When the edges are brown, pull them out of the oven.
We'll see how the
Susan also tried double baking these to get a more crisp cracker, and that works a treat.
Oh yeah.
Today, though, they've come out of the oven crisp on the edges and tender in the middle. Slightly sweet with a bit of a mix-up on ingredients, we've officially declared these to be Swedish soft tack. But I would eat these on their own as a perfect treat with a cup of hot Irish tea. And that is exactly what we did. We have cheese, we have crackers. Let's set the table for the final treat of this rainy, beautiful day. Susan, a master weaver, wove this table topper herself some years ago, and I've always treasured it. We actually have a couple available in our online store if you'd like to enjoy this beauty too. She only ever makes a few, but it's so fun to share it with people who love the same beauty. So the tablecloth goes on, the silverware set, but a feast isn't a feast without one final and very special part. Dessert. A sauce made in the old copper pot. A real old-fashioned treat.
Is that a beautiful?
Beautiful. Let's put a orchard water. These are apples. These are Prairie Spy. Rhubarb sauce with cream on it was a standard dessert in my household growing up.
Oh, hey Finn.
This rhubarb is Canada Red, and some of it's just regular old rhubarb. My mom was a fanatic about rhubarb. You had to pull the rhubarb right. And even into adulthood, she was still telling me, did you do it right? So you don't cut or break rhubarb off the plant. You take hold, this is my mother, both hands, and you pull. And you pull, you should have this, you should on the end, and you've pulled it out of the crown of the plant. And I think she was right in that. Once, if you harvest that way, you don't leave the plant open to disease, and your plant will last for decades. Of course, the leaves are poisonous, although not to grasshoppers. They love them. When I had a terrible grasshopper year, the first thing to go was the rhubarb leaves.
While the rhubarb sauce with dried apples was cooking, we were bustling about, and I wanted to beat the heavy rain and plant an old yellow rose known as the pioneer rose. This one is well over 100 years old. I dug it up this week from the old Fergus homestead, for whom our county, Fergus County, is named. This rose is as hardy and strong as they come, but it's never easy to get anything to grow in Montana, so we will see.
Rip off some of that long grass and mulch it. Rip off that long grass. The worms will come up with that.
If you want to watch the Pioneer Garden go in next week, be sure to click that subscribe button and give this video a like. That way our videos will be sure to find you in the future.
That makes me feel better. It's an old one. It's from
It looks old. Yeah.
turn of the century, 1800s to 1900s. And the best part is at some point, its bottom failed and someone dovetailed a new
Fixed.
bottom. Like, how many things would we do that to today?
Oh, and another thing my mother did, when we were kids, she would pull a rhubarb stem, and then she would give us a little brown bag with a little bit of sugar in the bottom, and it would still have the leaf on it. So, you know, we would dip it in sugar in our sack, chew the sugar off.
Is it tart?
Very. We didn't have much sugar in our sack, just enough to keep us going, keep us out of trouble.
Now the rhubarb and apples stewed the whole time we made the cheese and baked the crackers and set the table. But finally it had broken down beautifully and was ready to eat. The plan had been to enjoy it with whipped cream. In the true curse of the Homestead house, the whipping of cream is not going as planned. Sally, the cheesemaker, the milk cow milker, the master of butter making for year-round use, is struggling to make whipped cream.
Once again, another whipped cream.
I know. I feel like I've been here before. This is like my purgatory. Trying to turn cream into something else. This is like alchemy. Shoot.
Maybe it's the time of year, maybe it's Uncle Dan's ghost. Whatever it is, we will enjoy fresh cream poured over the stewed sweet rhubarb and be well pleased. Candlelight and rain in a lush green valley with a feast to eat. The three of us sat down to enjoy a lunch that hit many bumps along the way, but never got completely derailed.
Is it? It's good though. It's good, it's tart.
It's curdling the cream.
We laughed at how tart the rhubarb turned out, and we all loved the cheese. And the Swedish hardtack was absolutely wonderful to me. Reminded me of a traditional Scottish tea digestive that I once made while living off the grid years ago. The work is never done when cooking like this. There were the final jobs to do before we could call the day a success. Dishes had to be washed in 2 big pots of steaming hot water on the wood-burning stove with a very special method.
This will get our dishes nice and clean. I made this soap in about 1975. It's aged.
Yeah.
We need just a little sliver or two. Oof, on this knife. It only works in hot water.
We'll heat it up on the stove.
Yeah.
Some good soapy water and 3 women working. We were done in a flash.
You got our stuff?
We're ready.
Time to put out the candles. Hope you loved being in the cabin with us today. See you all in the Frontier House garden next Saturday. Cheers.
Your mom made this?
Yep. She did. It was our dessert. You know, she came right out of the Depression. Sheridan, Wyoming. Yeah, my mom's classic comment is, carp's not that bad if you eat it in the spring. And suckers, too. Suckers aren't bad if you eat them in the spring. They're a little bony.